What's up gamers, DreamcastGuy here, talking today about the PlayStation 5 because we are getting some crazy, monumental leaks, including a possible dev kit, how strong the system's probably going to be, and a possible price that is unfortunately a little bit high. Let's start off by talking about how we got this information. As many of you know, I've been making a bunch of videos about the PlayStation 5 in general over the course of last year because I personally am just super excited for it. I'm so curious to see what the PlayStation 5 can possibly do, but there's been a lot of bad information that's getting circulated about. This, though, thankfully, is from a very official source, which is actually a Sony patent. So normally, if you are a giant company, especially somebody like Sony who's trying to produce something like this that could end up generating billions of dollars, you need to protect yourself legally, and that's where patents come in. Essentially what you do is, as soon as you have a finalized design of what your product could be, you end up going to the government and turning it in, saying, alright, this is it, don't let anybody copy us. And looking at this patent, the design is crazy talk. Now, officially it's just called Unknown PlayStation Product, but looking at it, it's obviously a game console. I want to just have a bunch of these images scroll on the screen so you can really kind of just take them in with me, because they're kind of psychotic. I mean, this is a seriously weird-looking system, but it's probably not going to be the finalized look at launch. It's not going to be the retail thing. This is a prototype that is used for console development. Basically, this is very likely what's secretly sitting at a bunch of game developer studios right now so they can begin working on big PS5 games. I mean, I bet that this is certainly sitting in the secret basement of Naughty Dog right this very second as they work on, like, a new Uncharted or something. Now, to me personally, the biggest thing that really draws my attention is the crazy heating vents all over it. I mean, so obviously one of the main things that a lot of people have complained about when it comes to the PlayStation 4, the Slim, and of course the Pro is it certainly had some heating issues. I myself have never run into them, but I've definitely heard a lot of people complain about it, so it's very clearly a problem even if I'm not suffering from it. Something I've heard people say is that if you're not able to keep the environment that you game in very, very well temperatured, it can actually overheat the console, or your system will go into hyperdrive trying to keep itself from catching on fire. Like, I've heard a lot of people say the statement of, whenever I'm playing The Division or Rocket League, it sounds like my console is about to take off, where the internalized fan, which is used for sucking all that heat through the center chamber and out the back of the console, is overloading itself just to try and minimally work. Now, just looking at this patent, there are vents everywhere. It looks like there's just going to be fans on literally every side of it to just expel the maximum amount of heat. Now, you may think that this would actually make it louder. A lot of people think that more vents means more noise. It's actually the opposite. Typically, by doing this, you're going to have super good airflow. Basically, nothing is going to ever overheat this thing, no matter how much it's managing to produce crazy graphics, because everything is going to instantly and very easily exit the system itself. There's a chance you're probably looking at these pictures and going, okay, well that's nice, but it still looks super strange. I just want to point out, if you've ever done anything like studying the history of different consoles, like if you have the Encyclopedia of Game Machines, this actually shows a lot of different prototype systems, a lot of times what they look like, or what dev kits have their general appearance being. Each of them is different, but they're normally bigger than the finalized console is. Like, the Dreamcast was called the Katana while it was in development, and it was basically like a PC that was able to just have Dreamcast controllers plug into it. There was also weird stuff like the original Xbox. I always thought that dev kit looked funny because it kind of looks like an OG Xbox on steroids. It's just so beefed up. Each time, they definitely have a slimming down process. I do think that this is probably the general look, though, of how it may appear. Now, the thing that we do need to keep in mind is looking at some of the previous prototypes. These are like PlayStation 3 and PlayStation 4 dev kits. They're a little bit bizarre as well. So I think that there's a chance that this will be refined, but it's probably close to the look, at least in general. Some Something else that came out this week, though, from very good leakers is more stuff about its general power. It sounds like the PlayStation 5 is actually going to have very good clock frequency, which apparently means that it's going to be able to run things very, very fast. So a lot of these leakers, and I'm not even going to attempt to try and read off what their leaks say because they're so technical, but basically what a lot of people who are way smarter than me are saying is that these basically say that it's going to be really focusing on over 60 frames a second processing, about making sure your console not just runs good, but is actually able to sort of transcend the conventional means of graphics, to try and make it where if you are playing something like Spider-Man on PlayStation 4 or God of War or something, it'd be running at 60 or 100 frames a second all the time with no load screens. Now this is spectacular. The more I actually play a lot of these new recent exclusives, the more I'm starting to change my mind on the idea of frame rate as a priority. About the idea of we do need to try and make it where every game in the future is 60 frames a second. 30 frames a second is just... it's so old school at this point. I do think that they do manage to improve the experience by having more fluid visuals. Graphics don't matter all the time. I know people say that all the time, but I am saying that graphics can help, especially in a very story-focused game. If you have a lot of cutscenes and you have a lot of very dramatic dialogue from Shakespearean actors, it helps to improve the look. And this looks like it's very much trying to push the boundaries of that. But there is the downside of a lot of people now are beginning to put out some very educated guesses that minimum this thing is going to cost $600. That just by the general outline of the things that have officially been talked about by Sony, the official leaks we've seen of their dev kits and stuff like this now, and some of the things that have come out about its general power, it sounds like this is going to cost $600 at the low end. Now, we do additionally have to consider the fact that there are possibly about to be additional tariffs here in America, which means that if a lot of these factories aren't moved out of China, we could, if this does release in winter of 2020, we could actually be paying $800 for a PlayStation 5. That's too much. Okay, so I'm super excited for the PlayStation 5. I've made a bunch of videos on it. It's definitely one of the most excited I've ever been for a system in my life. $800 is too much. I don't care what they have to do. I don't care what corners they have to cut. But I do fear even a penny over $600 is absolutely going to sink it. Affordability is a massive part of the gaming industry. I mean, think about all the times where people are looking at a game and they simply don't buy it because it's just $1 too much. Gamers are frugal. I actually think that's a benefit to the gaming industry, though, is that we only spend money on what we think is completely worth the cost. That's why microtransactions are so hated and good DLC is so celebrated, is because it is the primary bang for your buck transaction. This is just so crazy high. Even $600 to me is too much. I paid $400 day one for my Xbox One. I paid $400 day one for the PlayStation 4. Or wait, did I pay $500 for my Xbox One? God, that's just so much. I mean, I had to save up for months and months and months to actually buy those. I was working like a crappy retail job at the time. That's just so much. You're putting it so far outside the bounds of affordability. That's just so crazy high. I think that they need to realize that even if you are offering a lot of features, cost is a barrier to a lot of gamers. Like, I know a lot of times right now there's a bunch of rumors going about that there is going to be full backwards compatibility with the PlayStation 4, where every game that currently works on this system will work on the next system. That is alluring, but if you tell people that it's not going to have a bunch of games for the first 6 months, the way that the PlayStation 3 had, you're going to have people who absolutely aren't going to jump on board simply because that is a very high price. If the best you can offer is an upgraded PS4 experience, that's not going to win people over. I do actually fear that this next generation could have a ton of overlap. Something that was very unique about this last console generation is that there was a very blurry line between the PlayStation 3 and the PlayStation 4 because a lot of people just simply weren't willing to jump the bridge. They weren't willing to come over to the dark side or whatever. And so because of it, we ended up seeing a bunch of very slow overlap. A lot of games were coming out on the PlayStation 3 and the PlayStation 4. Some games you may not even realize, like Persona 5 was actually a cross-generational game just because they didn't want to ignore the existing giant fan base. That's kind of my thing, is I am a little bit nervous of if we make a console that is this big and this amazingly powerful, but everybody's still developing games for the PlayStation 4 because it has over 100 million install base, that's going to be a problem. I definitely think that there could be an issue of if you release this thing and it costs 600 or 800 bucks, people aren't going to want to buy it because they already have a machine that might theoretically play the exact same games. But what do you think? Does this all seem weird? Are you actually kind of confused by these patents like I am because they are so goofy looking? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, share with your friends, and subscribe if you haven't already. But do me the biggest favor of all and keep dreaming. I'm actually wearing, I consider this my lucky shirt. It's my Atari Pitfall shirt that I bought a million years ago, and it's certainly the type of thing I like to put on whenever I'm talking about really crazy topics, like the PlayStation 5 dev kit. Whoa, what a day, what a day. Thanks so much for watching that video. If you want to see something else, you can always click this link to see what I put up last, or, subscribe and see what's coming up next. Also, I promise that whatever I do, it'll try not to suck.